I've already sold Semenyo to buy Phil Foden, but should you do it, and should you do it for a -4 this week? In today's video, we're going to take you through everything you need to know about the upcoming Game Week 15 deadline. Yes, that is right. We have another deadline tomorrow morning on Saturday. This is your complete guide. We'll look at players to buy. We'll look at benching rankings. We'll look at a wildcard draft, a free hit draft. If you're looking to play one of those chips in the quick turnaround, we'll talk about my team. And of course, once again, we will discuss the AFCON transfers that we're going to get in Game Week 16, meaning you need to use up all of your transfers this week to get the maximum benefit. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim, and subscribe if you are new around here. And I know we've discussed this over the past couple of days in every video, but it is the most important bit of information that I can give you this week. And that is, of course, once again, around the African Cup of Nations transfers. If you've already watched the past couple of videos over the last 2 days, thank you very much. You might be one of those people who is seeing their YouTube wrapped and seeing me in your top 5 channels. If that's you, thank you so much. And if you're in the top 0.5% or the top 5%, if you're even watching this video, thank you for your support. But those of you who are getting it and I'm in your top channels, or I'm in your top, or you're in my top, 5% of viewers, or whatever it is that you're seeing, thank you very much for your support. I've loved seeing them in the comments. But if you haven't watched it, here is the update and the information you need once again. So in Game Week 16, we will get up to a maximum of 5 free transfers. Everyone in the game will be capped out to the maximum of 5. No one gets more than 5. So if you roll to next week and you've got 4 in the bank, you still will only get an additional 1 to a maximum of 5 free transfers. So as a result, you need to be using all of your transfers in Game Week 15 to get the maximum benefit of +5 next week, once the game updates going into Game Week 16. Now, you technically don't have to use them. I've seen a couple of teams with sort of 4 or 5 free transfers in at the moment where there aren't 4 or 5 changes that I'd probably make. But unless you've got absolutely nothing to fix in your team, I really would be looking to use all of those transfers. When Game Week 16 does roll around, you don't have to use all of those transfers in Game Week 16. They work like normal transfers, right? So you can roll them into future weeks and you'll keep that 5 transfers for as long as you possibly want. Of course, you need to use 1 or you start burning them, because you can't go any higher than 5. That is always the rule. You cannot go higher than the 5 free transfers that we will get for free next week. So again, try and use all of your transfers this week. That is the general recommendation. In terms of when players are expected to leave, it seems to be being confirmed by some clubs now that players will play in Game Week 16, even though Man United play on the Monday night. There was a little bit of uncertainty because the date of departure was that Monday, but it looks like the likes of Brian and Burmo and Ahmad will play on that Monday, Game Week 16, and almost all of the players will not play in Game Week 17. If you want to see the full list of players affected, there is that really useful article on the Premier League website. You can also just Google Premier League players going to AFCON, and I'm sure you'll get a useful article and a useful list. But Game Week 15, they should play. Game Week 16, they actually should play. So the AFCON transfers are technically a week early because you're not going to need them so much in Game Week 16. It's Game Week 17 that you'll probably need to sell your AFCON players, but we get the 5 free transfers next week after the Game Week 15 deadline going into Game Week 16. So then having a look at some of your specific questions for Game Week 15 outside of all those free transfers. The first thing is around hits. Some of you are looking to buy Phil Foden in particular this week, or you're looking to make a couple of transfers in order to afford that. How do I think that's worth it? I don't think there are very many transfers in the game that are really worth a hit this week. I took a hit in Game Week 14 and it didn't really pay off. And particularly because the Game Week 16 AFCON transfers are just around the corner, I don't think I'd be taking hits unless you really think that both of the players that you're bringing in are significantly better than the players that you are taking out. If that's not the case, I would just wait and do maybe 1 this week and do the second one as part of your Game Week 16 5 free transfers. Next up is around Man United. Another disappointing performance. If you went on a Brian and Burmo captain or a Bruno Fernandes captain, you will be even more disappointed with the performance we saw against West Ham on Thursday evening. It is then quite a quick turnaround for them until they play on Monday evening away at Wolves. Would I be selling them? And particular question is, a lot of people, one of the most popular transfers this week is selling Brian and Burmo to buy Phil Foden. I would not be selling your United players. If you've got a double up, let's say you've got Mbeumo and Fernandes, I can start to consider it a little bit more. And let's say you're on free hit 16, then maybe I'd consider it even more, because then it's just a 1 week shootout between Mbeumo and Phil Foden. But if you're still looking over the next 2 weeks and you've got Mbeumo against Wolves and then you've got Mbeumo against Bournemouth, whereas you've got Phil Foden against Sunderland, where's the chance he doesn't start, and then you've got him away at Crystal Palace, I still think that Mbeumo is better short term, and Fernandes remains a long-term hold despite no returns in the past couple of games for him. And the final one is, if you're not certain on what transfer to make this week, or you're really looking at your team and you don't think there's anything obvious, I would sell Mateta. He's one of the most highly owned forwards in the game, but his minutes are disappointing. The fixture this week is not great. Then he plays Manchester City. He will be mass transferred out in game week 16, I imagine, as one of the most sold forwards. If you don't want to go to Thiago, or you already own him, someone like a Welbeck, someone like a Voltemada with their great fixtures this week could be nice 1 week punch. So if you've got nothing else to do, Mateta to Thiago, Mateta to Voltemada, Mateta to Welbeck is a transfer I would rather do than waste a transfer this week. Next up, let's have a look at the captaincy ranking for game week 15. To be honest, it's a pretty obvious one. I didn't really know who to put on the list that wasn't Erling Haaland. You could consider a Phil Foden, but I still don't think he's better than Haaland, and his minutes feel slightly less secure. You've got Bruno Fernandes going away to Wolves and Bryan Mbeumo going away to Wolves, but after the performance we saw from them on Thursday evening, I wouldn't be doing that. Voltemada at home to Burnley could be a punt. There's a small chance, though, he doesn't start with a big Champions League game for them next week, and he doesn't really feel like a player that's going to haul, although it is a pretty good fixture. So for me, it's all about Haaland, and it's whether you should triple captain him if you've still got the chip available. I still think that West Ham at home in game week 17 is a better option for the triple captaincy than it is on Haaland at home to Sunderland. They've played midweek, and of course, City have that big fixture against Real Madrid midweek, which Pep will definitely be focusing on. Now, Sunderland at home is a fixture that Pep has said he thinks is difficult. He needs to take seriously, and we've seen that in the press conference again today. So I don't think Haaland is going to get rested. If you're going to play a free hit or a bench boost in game week 17, yes, this is probably the second best week to play it. But West Ham at home, the way that West Ham are playing in general, the way Sunderland are playing, I think I still prefer that fixture. But Haaland is definitely right up there. This doesn't feel like a week to differentiate the captaincy. Even with Fernandes being quite popular in terms of being selected, I think the performance on Thursday night will put enough people off doing that ever again. Phil Foden, people will consider after back-to-back braces, but he still is just not as good as Haaland in the same team. And then having a look at a little bit of injury news and press conference updates. Starting off with Bournemouth, Senesi overcomes his one-match suspension, so will be back available. Arteta was giving very little away in his press conference. It sounded like both Declan Rice and Saliba might play, but we might also see neither of them in the team. With the other injuries at centre-back, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see a return for Saliba. And Declan Rice did say midweek that he hopes he'll be available after being substituted off. Then we're at Newcastle. Johan Vissa might be back in the squad for them this weekend, although it doesn't look like he's going to be ready to start this one. At Nottingham Forest, Gibbs White has been playing with pain. It does sound like from Sean Dyche that he will be back in the squad and still start, but he might see reduced minutes again like we saw midweek. Murillo overcame his injury but then got sick midweek. It sounds like he'll be back available. And Man United, both Dalot and De Ligt might be back and available to return. De Ligt missed out midweek and Dalot got substituted off slightly earlier than we expected, so they're both a doubt, but there is still a chance they play. And finally at Everton, to be honest, it sounds like Keane won't be available from the press conference, but he wasn't fully ruled out, so he's still in with a chance. If you've got Keane, I'd probably look to start him, and if he doesn't play, you get someone off your bench unless you don't have any other cover. So that was all from the press conferences from what I saw. If there's anything more from when I've recorded this video, I'll of course add it to the list. After that, having a look at a benching ranking in goal. If you've got Ramsdale, of course, Pope is out. Ramsdale is top. Then it's Verbruggen, actually a nice fixture at home to West Ham. Donnarumma, then it's David Raya in at fourth. Alisson is in next. Then you've got Lamens, Sanchez, Verbruggen, Pickford, Henderson, Leno, Sells, Martinez, Petrovic, Kelleher. Then it's Dubravka. I don't like the fixture, of course, away at Newcastle. Perry, Johnston, Areola, and Rose. If you're in a situation where you do have Pope, I got asked this question last week, I would not sell him for a hit. I would just play Dubravka and sell Pope once we get to those game week 16 free transfers. Elsewhere in there, when we start to have a look at the outfield players, if you've got a Fernandes, you've got a Bryan Mbeumo, you absolutely play them. Wolves look absolutely horrible. Now, this could be the week that maybe Wolves do something at home, but I wouldn't be surprised if they lose again. And Fernandes and Mbeumo have got to be involved, as is if you own a Mateus Cunha. Outside of that, down in Munoz, I really like Thiago. Spurs have not been good. And actually at home, their home form is very poor as well. You've got Thiago in there. If you've got Semenyo, I'd play him. Then it is the Crystal Palace defenders with the attacking threat. Mark Guehi and Lacroix over Iliman and Dye. Then you've got Mateta, Eze, Kudus, Gakpo. João Pedro, I do think will start. I probably would look to sell him, though. I don't love his form and I don't love the upcoming fixtures for him. Declan Rice is in next. Then it's Timber and Calafiori. That game against Aston Villa is quite difficult to call, but I still back Arsenal to probably win it. Then it's Grealish, Dewsbury Hall, Tarkowski and Keane. You've got a lot of the Everton players, which I don't mind at home to Forest. I think that'll be quite a low scoring game though. So pick your players wisely there. Then it's Anderson of Nottingham Forest. Again, all in the same game. It's quite a difficult one to call. Enzo Fernandez in next. I do expect him to have to do more defensive work and play deeper whilst Caicedo remains out. Virgil van Dijk is in next, and then it is Reinders. You also have O'Reilly here. Now, the reason for that is I think there's a chance that both of these don't start. I've said that Pep will take this match seriously at home to Sunderland, and he absolutely will. But that doesn't mean I don't think he will make some changes in there. I think there's a risk to Reinders, definitely, who's only just come back to being first choice. And then you've got O'Reilly. Both players I think he'll probably want for the Real Madrid fixture midweek. Now, if you think they definitely start, then absolutely start them because it's a good fixture for them. But with a slight risk of minutes, I'd rather play some more nailed players over them. Outside of that, it's Richards. And Richards is above Anderson. It is very close. At the moment, I've got Richards starting in my team over Anderson. Then you've got Van der Ven, Williams. You've got Senesi, Chalobah, Reece James. I do think Bournemouth probably score, but I also think Chelsea probably score. Then it's Xhaka, Potts, Vandenberg, Cash, Rodon, Krupi Jr., Esteve, and Mukiele at the bottom with their difficult fixtures for the cheap defenders. Krupi Jr. did start the last game for Bournemouth, but I do expect Evan Nilsson to come back in. Now, with a slight issue with injuries in their midfield, it's possible that they do play together, but I still wouldn't be trying to punt on Krupi Jr. this week. Moving on to have a look at best players to buy. And just before we do that, there is some really useful data that I use throughout these videos from Rob T FPL in partnership with Solio Analytics. And I want to talk you through the first of it, which looks at the next 6 game weeks, the projected number of goals that each team would score and the projected number of clean sheets. So in terms of goals, over the next 6 weeks, City are first, followed by Liverpool, then Arsenal, then Man United, Newcastle, Brighton, Chelsea, and Brentford. Now, of course, it's not as simple as just buy players from teams who are expected to score the most goals because City might have more goal share shared around, particularly Liverpool do. Whereas if you look at someone like a Brentford, they're a bit lower down, but Thiago mops up a lot of those chances. But I think it's just quite interesting to look at, particularly you've got a few games in there. If you look at Newcastle, they're high up, but it's really weighted to a couple of games, particularly Burnley at home. So a good one if you're on a free hit, whereas Manchester City particularly are predicted to do well in every game. And then if you look at Arsenal, again, it's weighted to a couple of games. When you look at the clean sheets, again, it's very similar, but slightly switched, right? Arsenal are very high up in every single game that they play, whereas all of the other teams tend to sort of spike a good fixture. And outside of that, it drops way down. You can look at City, right? They've got Sunderland at home and West Ham at home. But outside of that, Crystal Palace away, where their clean sheet odds drop. If you have the ability to buy a second Arsenal defender, I would absolutely be doing that over buying anyone else in the game at the moment because their clean sheet odds remain right at the top. As a result, David Raya is in number 1 as the best goalkeeper to buy. Then it is Verbruggen as a cheap option who rotates really well with Dubravka. Personally, I wouldn't buy any other goalkeeper outside of these two. If you've got the money, it's Raya. If you don't, it's Verbruggen. If you wanted some others, Sanchez of Chelsea, then it's Donnarumma, Dubravka, of course, is in, and then Sells and Kelleher at cheaper options. Into defense, Timber. You could actually look to save the money by going with Calafiori, who does look pretty nailed. He actually has started more games than Timber, I think, this season. So Calafiori is right in conversation, especially if you can't afford Timber. Daniel Munoz is next for his attacking threat. Then I've gone with Malik Chow. O'Reilly is in here, but I find it difficult to place him exactly in this list because I'm not certain he's going to start. So actually, he probably doesn't make the top 7 this week. I do like him long term, but I'm not certain he definitely starts this fixture. So it's a slight concern if you're looking to buy him. And then it's Palace away next week, which isn't the best. Lacroix is in next, then it's Van Heck and Anderson. I also like the other Palace defenders in Richards and Mark Guéhi as well. Into midfield, Saka does remain number 1. Now, he might not be worth the money, but if you've got it with the upcoming Arsenal fixtures, I still like that. Phil Foden, City are predicted to score the most goals over the next few weeks, and it feels very much like it was just Haaland scoring them, and now Haaland and Foden are only the 2 players who are going to score. Then it's Bruno. I still like long-term with the fixtures they've got. Then it is Minter, Bruno Guimaraes, Elliot Anderson. If you don't have the money for Foden, punting on Jeremy Doku. And then up front, Haaland, of course, and then it's Thiago. If you want a short-term punt or another forward to look at, Voltemada with Burnley at home, Welbeck with West Ham at home. I prefer both of these over Mateta, who's still not bad, right? He's still on penalties. He's still getting a lot of big chances. He's just missing too many of them. Then it's Jimenez at a cheaper price. And then it's Mark Guéhi. Despite goals recently, I wouldn't be buying Calvert-Lewin for those of you asking in the comments. And then having a look at a free hit draft for Game Week 15. Just before we look at the draft, a quick look at the data for this week alone. In terms of projected goals, City are first, then it's Newcastle, Brighton, Liverpool, Man United, and Chelsea. those are the teams that are top sort of 6 or 7 for goals projected. In terms of clean sheets, Newcastle City are top 2. Then it's Arsenal, Brighton, Everton, and Man United. But once you start to drop below 35%, it's quite difficult to predict. The big thing in this free hit draft is there is no Arsenal. If you're on free hit, with the way Aston Villa are playing, I have decided to take them on. We've gone with a triple up on Manchester City because I'm not certain on O'Reilly starting. I've gone with Gvardiol as the defender. We've gone with Phil Foden and we've gone with Erling Haaland. We've also got a triple up on Newcastle. I've gone with Malak Chow and Voltamada, and I've actually gone with Ramsdale. If you don't want to go for the double up on Man United mids, which I would completely understand with the way they've performed over the past couple of weeks, but it is Wolves. If you don't want to do it though, I take one of them out, go for an Anthony Gordon and change your goalkeeper to someone like a Verbruggen, as we've only got double Brighton at home to West Ham, but we've gone with a double attack with Minter and Welbeck. Tarkowski is in. Because of the value we've got in this team, you actually can have quite a strong bench. We've gone with Elliot Anderson and gone with a cheap defender on the bench. And then, of course, Dubravka. Haaland, of course, captain. And then having a look at a wildcard draft, things remain pretty similar. We've gone with a double up on the Crystal Palace defense, and we have taken out Mateta. Verbruggen is in, Timber, Munoz, Malak Chow. If you don't have the money, you could go Calafiori over Timber. Richards and Anderson on the bench, of course. Also, if you don't have the money, you could just go Richards to a 4 million defender. This draft only has 2 Arsenal in, and I couldn't find it very easy to see where I'd spend the third Arsenal spot. If you have the money, Malak Chow up to Calafiori would probably be where I'd spend it. You could also do something like a Minter or an Anderson to someone like a Declan Rice if your team value is really good, or go Verbruggen to David Raya. But unless your team value is really strong, it's actually quite difficult to fit in 3 Arsenal unless you, for example, were to drop Saka. Saka is in, though, with Minter, Anderson, Fernandes, and Phil Foden as a really nice, strong midfield 5. You can, of course, play a back 4 some weeks. That's why we've got 5 strong defenders, because your cheap forward up front is Mark Guiu, and he doesn't play and will just sit last on the bench. And, of course, it is Haaland and Thiago for their long-term fixtures. Haaland set and forget captain, and Thiago looks like a great option who just continues to rise in price. And then that just leaves my team not too much to report. I confirmed my transfer early on in the week, which was Semenyo up to Foden. As the deadline gets closer, I am worrying that Phil Foden might not start at home to Sunderland, and Semenyo playing the Chelsea team that I support and that I'm going to watch, that doesn't fill me with loads of confidence. But the big decision is Richards versus Anderson. At the moment, Richards is in, Haaland captain, Foden transferred in. My team is pretty self-explanatory, almost locked. It's just that final decision in defence. At the moment, I've gone with Richards because I also have Mateta, so I'm going to just back a Crystal Palace win, I think. And that is all for the complete guide video for Game Week 15. There has been an awful lot of content this week and an awful lot of FPL to think about and a lot of football to talk about as well. If you've enjoyed the content this week, please do think about subscribing if you haven't already. Please like the video. The aim is always 2,000 on every video, and you've been smashing it this week, absolutely blowing it out of the water. So thank you all so much. Really feeling the love and all the support on the channel, particularly with you all saying you're in the top % of listeners with the YouTube wrap that has been out over the past couple of days. As always, there will be the deadline stream on Saturday morning where we answer all of your questions, the 2 hours in the build up to the deadline, whatever your time zone is. Make sure you tune in. It is already scheduled, so click the link above, click notify for when it goes live. Thank you all for watching. Any questions that I haven't answered in this stream, please drop it in the comments down below. I'll answer some and we'll answer the rest on the stream on Saturday. Anyway, thank you all for watching. 2,000 likes, the aim, subscribe if you are new, and I'll be back again very soon.